Good evening, Malden, and welcome to our YouthForum Forum with City Council candidates. My name is Beatrice Oliveira.
And I'm Kean Morris, and we will be your moderators for the night. Joining us tonight, at-large candidates Carrie McDonald, Craig Spadafora, Karen Collin Hayes, Solomon Davidoff, and Michelle Luong. Ward 1 candidates Peg Crow and Brian Garrity, and Ward 6 candidate Stephen Winslow.
In the interest of time, we will be skipping over opening statements and jumping right into questions. We'll be asking 5 questions to each candidate with 2 minutes for each candidate to answer the question, followed by audience questions. Finally, each candidate will get another 2 minutes for closing arguments. Thank you for joining us tonight in amplifying Malden youth voices and for informing Malden voters about their choices this coming November.
Before we begin, we'd like to give a brief overview of the function of City Council for the viewers in the studio and at home. Councilors on the City Council work together to set policy, adopt ordinances, orders, and resolutions. They review and approve the city's annual budget, approve or confirm appropriations, appointments, and other matters proposed by the mayor, and perform many other legislative-related tasks. City Council are the spokespeople for the community and our future.
And without further ado, we'll jump into our questions.
Question 1. As we all know, budgets are shrinking and prices are skyrocketing. As young kids in Malden, we want to make sure things stay affordable as we enter young adulthood. What ideas do you have to support new income streams for the city? Starting with Carrie McDonald.
Thank you. Can I just understand which camera should I be looking at? This one right here? Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me today. And this is a key question for our city. And as the chair of the Finance Committee, I have helped lead open conversation, transparent process for the last 2 years about this exact issue. We do have budget challenges in Malden, like many cities and towns. And Malden has the additional unique challenge that we are investing more in our schools, and that's really important. I'm a parent, I have 2 kids in school, in Malden Public Schools, and so making sure that we can invest in our schools and in our parks and our public services while also balancing our budget as we're required to do by law, and with the constraints that the state gives us is really important. So we're having a conversation right now in the Finance Committee about how to close what has been a structural, so year-over-year gap in our budget. And we're talking about both ways to continue to reduce expenses, because Malden already has one of the lowest kind of expenses in all the other areas of City Hall compared to our peers, but also to consider new sources of income, as you said. One of those may be going to the voters and asking to approve an increase in the tax rate. That's called an override, and the trade-off would be to allow the voters to decide whether we need to make dramatic cuts or not. Long-term, though, on the timeline you're talking about, I really want to see us do more commercial development, mixed-use development, to build the tax base so that we are not in this situation in the future. So we need a bridge to get from here to there. We've talked about this a lot in the City Council meetings. I'm sure we'll hear similar sentiments from my colleagues, but I think it's really important to figure out how to avoid massive cuts to services in the short term so that we don't undermine ourselves in the long term, to give ourselves a bridge to the future where we can really build the tax base that will sustain our city for your generation to come.
Mr. Spadafora.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the audience. Thanks for the forum. I think you're probably going to hear a lot of similar answers to that because it is a timely topic. Like Councilman McDonald said, we are not unique in that situation, so I guess we're in good company that way. It is challenging through the country too when you have insurance rates and gasoline and clothing and food going up more than 2.5%, which is our tax levy maximum. It's really hard to sustain that budget. Yes, we're going to be asking the taxpayers for money. I also think we should participate in some of that, and we are looking as a body to look at all expenditures that might not be necessarily critical but important, but take an opportunity to look at them and say, maybe we'll skip it this year. I think things like, we spend a lot of money on 4th of July. Maybe we cut down some of that for the next couple of years so that we can save that and save some jobs. That's the last thing we want to do as a community. Like Councilman McDonald said, I've been an advocate is looking at the tax base. The old adage, you don't want all your eggs in one basket. The same thing in Malden. We have 3 taxes bases. You have commercial, industrial, and residential. Commercial, industrial bring in not only just the taxes, a higher tax base, it's about a 58% tax difference between the commercial base and the residential, but it also brings permits, fees, tax uses, right? So if you sell liquor, you get a liquor license every year, it's $5,000. You get sales tax, you get user tax, you build a hotel. you have all these other taxes that come with it, and more importantly, you might have jobs. And as speaking to young kids here, we want to have more jobs for the youth, and we've been doing it as a community. We really need the private sector to help us both from the taxes as well as helping us get those jobs for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Karen Cologne Hayes. I'm the City Council at Large. So my colleagues here talked a lot about how we got here. And yeah, we are in a financial crunch right now. They talked about the possibility of a prop override. So what I'm going to talk about then is some ideas that I've had on how we can increase revenue, because that's what we need to do, right? We can't just get everything done and balance our budget by cutting people. Services to Malden, we're a gateway city. We need our services. The people here, it's going to be very hard if we place any kind of financial tax on them over what they're already doing. So I've been working and trying to think about ideas. We have a lot of open storefronts here. We have businesses. We need to really get back at luring people in and showing them what Malden has to offer. These open businesses, we have storefronts that have been open for a long time. And so one thing that I brought up was having either a fine or something that legally, talking to legal, I had brought this up in a financial meeting, that we could get money from them also. But also something recently, we were starting to look at short-term rentals, any way that we can get additional revenue into our city. We have Airbnbs here that have been people have been using for years, over 300 of them, and we're not collecting anything on that. So my focus has really been trying to figure out how we can bring more revenue in, so that we're not just looking at cutting services, which is going to be hard. I mean, I'm not saying that we're not going to have to do that, but I'd really like to do both at once. Thank you.
Probably the most difficult position in one of these forums is to be near the end of a question, because you hear all the great answers up front.
Okay.
So I'm in the middle this time. It makes it a little easier. But rather than just repeat what has already been said again, because these have been some very good answers, I really think what we need to do is similarly address the open storefronts and look and see what we can do with them. Working with the people who own them, see whether they can be rented out for smaller pop-up businesses. Maybe there's a thing I've seen more often in Florida, the idea of not quite antique malls, but malls where they have small businesses. An idea of a structure being used to house many businesses at once, or allowing a variety of people to form and practice with their own businesses. What we're talking about, when you suggest people want to see what they have available for them in the future, what we are doing, I think that's a place where we can all get involved. And so young adults who want to try their hand, start their first businesses, might have an opportunity there, might have a way to bring in, start a small business, perhaps find something on the city level to help instruct them in what goes into that sort of business, what prep is actually needed, and have as an end result an actual business they can run for a while.
Hi, I'm Michelle Luong, and thank you so much for organizing this. This is a great opportunity for all of us. And so I can agree with Carrie, and I can agree with Craig and Karen and Solomon. But the bottom line is that we all have to work together to fix the problem that we have. And when I mean everyone, I mean that school committee, city council, administration, residents, we all have to come together to solve what we have. And that's going to be future planning. We've all been talking about, building income streams and making it viable, and our city viable for youth to be able to afford to live here and afford to do business here and afford to thrive. And I think that the steps that we take now is going to matter. And I think it can be from cutting costs as far as we can cut them. It is increasing in building a business development office in our city that's going to help small businesses be creative and thrive and sustain themselves. It's going to be having a stronger relationship with our Malden Chamber of Commerce, which is a great resource for all our small businesses. but it needs to have everybody working together for the goal, and the goal is to build a stronger Malden for everyone. And that's gonna take everybody, and for the youth, I would love to see the youth at the high school more involved with the Chamber of Commerce, more involved with small businesses. How are they created? How do you sustain them? And I think it's gonna take all of us to solve the budget problem. It's gonna take all of us to, work together, and it's gonna be cutting expenditures where we have to cut them, and hopefully, if we have to cut jobs, we have to make sure our response times are there for fire and for police and for making sure our schools are fully staffed. It's gonna take everyone, and I look forward to being part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm Peg Crow from Ward 1. Yes, it is tough, Solomon, and so, yeah, we'll get there. We've been looking at this, and on the council, we've been talking about sort of building the commercial tax base, and that takes years. It doesn't happen overnight, it's, unfortunately. And I do think, some of the smaller business and figuring how we use some, even the storefronts, but I have a couple places that I'm talking to the property owners, see if we could do something instead of having it just blank piece of land. In the short term, so that things can get ramped up. I do think actually we're gonna have to really identify our capital end needs and our small end needs, because it's not needs and wants, we all need this, but I need a vacation, but that's a small end need at the moment. And I think we have to really look at that and see what we're gonna do as a community. I know that I'm really hopeful with the Malden River Works. I think the next great hope is the river, and with the Malden River Works and do all the work that's happening, might really inspire some of those property owners to kind of rethink, redevelop, reimagine. As Council Spatafor and I have talked about, it might be the right spot for a hotel. Imagine being right down from the casino. They stay in Malden, they can go gamble there, but they come back here with the meals tax, the hotel tax, and do some of their business in here. So we need to have a vision and not just wait for who's coming to us, but have a vision so that we can help guide what's going to happen to us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bryn Garrity. I'm running in Ward 1. I think that this issue has layers that all need to be happening concurrently. So we need to be thinking about the immediate future while also setting ourselves up for success as inflation keeps rising, as things keep costing more. New tariffs are hitting at the end of this year. We're going to be constantly battling the cost of living with trying to pay our employees, city employees. Some of them are pensions, some of them are unions. We have to be attentive to their needs. So I think I'm, as a property owner, as a resident, I'm in total favor of the prop override. I think that we need to lean on our residential base. The demographics of Malden are changing wildly, and the younger generation is willing to step up and make these changes. Our age category, the median age now is 37. There is no one younger than 37 on the council. And the people that I know who are new homeowners or young families in Malden are willing to step up and pay a little bit more if that secures future for the youth, if that helps with school funding, if that helps bring in new business. We also love third spaces. There is a lack of third spaces, especially for youths who don't have a ton of money to spend. We have Bodeborg. That's kind of it. Bodeborg is teeming with teens every Saturday night. And we can do more. We can do food halls in empty spaces. I would love to see, Lowell has a shop, like a shared creative space where you can rent booths, you can rent equipment, you can rent, woodworking equipment that you obviously don't want to have in your tiny apartment. There are so many avenues that we can look into. I do agree with the hotel. I'm a huge fan of the, I'm sorry, you're blocked.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you knew.
Yeah, I did not see that. Ultimately, we have to be paying attention to the now and the future and work to both.
So, Councilor Steve Winslow, I represent Maplewood Square, which is the city's second largest retail area. So some of the things we're talking about there is I'm working now to try to consolidate some bus stops so we could open up some curb space, particularly for our restaurants who have, people coming and going and picking up food. That will increase meals tax. One of the things when I was in Malden, England, I was surprised about on their main street was how many vintage stores. And some of our ordinances related to secondhand sales are very burdensome, so it might be something we visit and try to tweak those to make it a little bit bigger, and that's a big popular thing. We had someone on Highland Avenue who left, and someone in Maplewood Square who left just because that didn't work out. The other thing I think of is sometimes you have to, with the new economy, you have to figure out how to get resources, and a few things. At the state level, there's a Municipal Empowerment Act, that is up for consideration again. So working with our state delegation to find other ways that we can get resources. And the other thing I actually sent over to Senator Lewis the other day was there's some communities, we actually right now, if you have a ride share, there's I think 20 cents every ride in Malden that goes to the city, and we're using that to fix our traffic signals and other things. Some communities are doing that for food deliveries, and I actually think there's, we should basically consider trying to have, we have to pay more for trash and recycling because of more takeout businesses and more deliveries. So that's a burden on the city. So having some revenue that helps offset that, so it's just not all on bag fees and that type of thing. Something that we should ask our state delegation to look at. And in the long run, I think it is bolder development. I worked in community development here in Malden, in Somerville, as well as in Gloucester. And it's hard to really anticipate and how that works. But bolder, really understanding that if we want mixed use, we have to look at higher scale buildings because 3 stories doesn't work for that. So I think it is, we have to have these short, medium, and long-term things we got to look at, and there's a lot of options. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much. Now for question 2. Action speaks louder than words. What is something that you have personally done for the community, and or what will you continue to do on the council that serves Malden residents? From left to right, starting with Steve Wilson.
So when my wife and I moved to Malden, one of the things we liked to do was bicycle, and it was very unsafe. We found very quickly. So when we bought a home and saw that this rail bed through Malden was not being utilized, we had seen like the Minuteman Trail over on, so we formed the organization Bike to the Sea, and we worked for well over 20 years to get the Northern Strand Trail to happen. So that just shows there was a lot of grit and determination I had to put in that, and I worked with pretty much everybody on this panel in some way. I remember Councilor Spatafore, I think, was one of the first people to step up and that type of thing. So working with that is a big thing, and now one of the things I sort of turned more towards transportation. I'm working in the Maplewood area, and this is something all our councilors have to work on. The MBTA is really looking and rejiggering bus routes through Malden, and we just had one that we got a direct connection now to Logan Airport, and we have a direct connection to Harvard Square, and there's some more things. So that's one of the other things to look at that as an opportunity as well as a challenge to improve our bus service, to get some bus shelters, to maybe consolidate some bus stops that just cause congestion. So that's the other type of thing I'm working on in terms of transportation. And the other thing locally in the Maplewood area, I'm proud to have worked a lot on Trafton Park, and that's turned a big success. And I know when I was Councilor Large working initially on some of the plans for Kerstead Park, and that Councilor Simonelli's really taken that to another level, and great to see all those type of things. So I've been very successful, and I really want to continue those things going forward. Thanks.
One of the things that I'm involved with in not just Malden but in this area is rowing. I row on the Malden River several times a week. I coach at Somerville High School on the Mystic and Malden Rivers. I participate in cleanups. I've been invited to join a steering committee to help plan the boathouse that's going in. I know and support the Malden coaches and the rowing program there. And something that I'm very invested in is getting kids not just outside, but active outside. I also have been involved in river cleanups. I've been involved with the Friends of the Malden River for a couple of years now. Through my work with rowing, I opened up a studio here in town that offers youth classes, it offers para classes, there are not very many places where people with disabilities can go and be active. And so I've been involved not just in Malden, but getting involved over the greater Boston area with multiple groups that work with disabled athletes. And something that I really want to do as a council member that's not necessarily, an activity, but I really think that we need to be more connected to our residents and what they need. And I want to implement polling and surveys and door-to-door knocking that is word specific and also citywide in general, so we know what the important issues are. A lot of people don't feel heard, and we want them to feel heard, but also be heard. Their voices matter. We need to know what the issues are. And honestly, for working with the general public, there are plenty of cheap, slam dunk projects that we can do that will make residents really, really happy. And it won't cost us a lot of money. So those are things that I think are super important that we need to pay attention to.
Thank you. So, involved in lots of things, as we all have across the board here, but I think some of the things that I have done is around listening to residents, around safety. Safety's always been sort of an issue, and a while ago, before it was even allowed in communities, I actually went to the State House and testified against for lowering the speed limit to 25. And I worked with Senator Jalen actually in Somerville to sort of get that in. And then finally, you got to have a local option, so we did that. Slowing people down and really help safety. Additionally, there's lots of other little projects that when residents come to me, this is a concern, we have this problem. Trying to think outside of the box and find new ways to address some of these issues that maybe people didn't think about. So we did at the intersection of Bell Rock, Madison, and Green Street. It's just very strange. You have to go down there to find out. But triangle thing and with the one-ways, and they go in the wrong way. And so to test it out, we actually, a lot of the councils here, came and painted. We painted it to see if it could direct the flow, and it did. And the neighbors really were appreciative of that. And now when we just redid that intersection, we build out, so it's not just paint, there's a little more in there. So things like that. I actually just worked with the Office of Strategic Planning in the City of Malden, OSPCD, to submit for Safe Routes to School, a grant to look at, to make some major improvements to the Ferry Street and Cross Street intersections right near the Ferryway School. It is a really difficult situation, and that grant could be upwards of $1 million. So it is some of those things that helps the residents. I try to be responsive to people that come to me with an idea, think outside the box, let's see how we can get this done.
So, lost my train of thought for a second. So I actually spent a term on our school committee from 2020 to 2022. And while I was on the school committee, I actually put in a special education audit, and as well as and revitalized our bullying prevention and an anti-bully task force as well. So I've also spent during that time frame as an educational advocate across our city, helping many families as well as my own to navigate our system and to navigate our school system and making sure the most vulnerable of our students have what they need to succeed. One of the other things, I worked at the state level and sat on the Mass Coalition to End Child Marriage, which not only benefited Malden but benefited our entire Commonwealth. Since when it was passed in 2022, Malden was actually only the seventh state to ban child marriage under the age of 18, and we currently have only 14 states across the country. So, and it's really important, that's something that's very important to make sure that our children are safe. So I can assure you that, safety is gonna be a big thing for me on the council, as well as affordable housing and making sure that everything that we do is balanced and that people feel safe. From traffic to our response times, being on the doors. I've talked to people in Ward 5 that have extended response times for fire and for police. So we have to work on that in the different pockets around our city, that's a problem. So those are some of the things that I've worked on, continue to work on. I work with Disability Commission on visual services and visual aids for working with the library. So I'm very passionate about those things, and I will continue to work on that stuff going forward.
A lot of the work I've been doing over the past 15 years or so has been within my congregation. We reach out, we work outside of the congregation as well, but I've volunteered as our congregational librarian. I'm one of the people who started up our new security details, which we've had to put in place in the last 6 months. I've been involved in our clothing drives, and those we actually currently take out to the Linden School, since it's one of the only places that still do collect.
Yep.
So I actually have another bag of shoes I have to bring out there next week.
I can't take it, you're looking at me, I'm not gonna take it.
But I associate you with the school. I participated actually with the backpack giveaway with Craig at the school. Done a variety of small things around town in that respect. I have also taught, most of this has been in the Brookline area, doing some enrichment programs, call them, for some schools there. And a lot of my time has been taken up, honestly, that I teach on the adjunct level. So my busiest semester in the past number of years was teaching at 4 colleges, 8 different classes in 7 different disciplines. And I make myself available to my students. So I was putting in probably about another 25 to 30 hours per week just meeting with students and communing with them online. I also do tutoring on the side, free of charge, and college advising, again, free of charge. Because that's important. It's the only way to actually, we expect people to know what they're going to do with their lives by 17. And the statistics show that people are generally not going to work within their majors. So they need flexible college plans. Stop there.
Okay, so I am a community organizer. I've always been, it's who I am at my heart. I like bringing people together. One of my core values is just, making sure that people are heard. And so the first thing I did when I moved to Malden 30 years ago was form a group, Friends of Oak Grove. And what that was it started out as a neighborhood group where we all came together, because I think that is really important, especially this is a large city, but you can make it feel smaller and homey by doing things like that. We looked out for each other, we threw block parties. Very proud of that. And then the next thing I did was, because we are a diverse city here, there was another group that Malden Core, Community Organizing for Racial Equity. So we got members across this city, which probably was some of the biggest community conversations that we have had in this city. Over 200 people would show up, and we really worked hard on trying to bring our community together, because that's what makes us stronger. And I was really proud of doing those, having those conversations. So it really is about bringing voices to the government, to the table. So my biggest thing that I'm gonna say that I've been proud about this past year and a half was the Malden Youth Council. Very much involved with bringing youth voices up to the council, to wherever I work. I always want to involve youth. And so that is something that we did this year. It had a lot of pushback. We were very resilient. It taught our youth how to work through difficult situations, but they're learning, and being civically involved is very important, especially now this way in the world where we're going. We need to all come together, and the youth, you're all going to bring us forward. You're our future. So we look to you. You're smarter than we are. And we look to you for your answers. And so that is something that I am extremely proud of. Thank you.
Ready? The first thing I would say as a counselor at large, what I'm proud of is in what I've done, I've never done by myself. So I think when I use the word I, it's what we've done. Because you can't pass a bill in the city without great comrades and coworkers, and sometimes you start an idea and somebody takes it and picks it up, or vice versa. So it's hard, honestly, for me to sit here and reflect and say, what have I done? Because I'm not a person to say I usually say we, or let's get it done. From my perspective, I tell you there's three big ones that stick out to me. The first one is going to be, like Council Winslow mentioned, we had the opportunity to pass the meals tax. And originally we were somewhat the last community around to do it. We didn't want to put a burden on the residents. But we came up with there was a couple councils that came up with a great idea to pass the meals tax and use that money to buy a piece of property in Council Ward, Winslow's ward as conservation land. So they wouldn't put a housing development up there because that's what the resident wanted. There's a lot of wildlife up there at the time in Malden. We didn't have it like we do now. The second thing is we helped finance the bike path. So that was one of the big ones. The second one I would tell you is the water pipes. I worked in a law that when you sell your home or you do a amount of upgrade, you have to upgrade that water line from a lead line to a copper line. That's the second big one. The third big one is really, I would say, I just actually lost my train of thought. I forgot my third big one. Wow. But I would say this: the two most impactful things that I've done since I've been council, not from a bill perspective of sitting up in the council, it's really finding the Bread of Life and the Malden Warming Center. The reason why I mentioned those is I went there as a political achievement, right? You go there, you take the pictures. I never left those organizations because I came home with more than I went there giving. And I will tell you, as youths, the Bread of Life, we've been delivering Thanksgiving meals for years, and I complained so much they gave me the role to do it. The Warming Center, I went there once, I wanted to try it out. I actually came home feeling, obviously, very humbled by it, and that was, I think, a great achievement because those are two great organizations in the city of Malden that give back.
So I'll give you an example of something I'm really proud of working on before I was a city councilor, because I think we'll talk about our council records a lot too. So I was part of a small team of residents who started a project called the Malden People's Budget back in 2021, and it was like a community survey that says this is what the city spends on the budget. What do you think the priorities of the city should be? And hundreds of people took the survey. And we presented it to the mayor and the finance team, and presented the results as part of the city council hearings. Maybe that's why I'm interested in finance and budget stuff now. And so after I was on the council, I stepped back from that project because I had a different role. It continued for another 2 years, and in the next year, one of the results of the survey was that people wanted to see more investment in the teen center. So I brought that forward, and we made an investment of $10,000 in the operating budget for the teen center. So they had expenses. The teen center, as folks know, of course, raises money. Many of my colleagues contribute. So that was really important to me to see that that when our people get involved, that there's an outcome to that, and that their leaders are listening. And I do think that the council does a good job of making a lot of information available, but that doesn't always mean that it's accessible for people, that you can really understand what's happening. You can tune into a meeting and be completely lost. Half the time things come on the agenda that I've never heard of, and I'm only in my second term. So I think it's really important for us to design more ways to meaningfully engage people and then really honor their feedback and act on it. We've done that with some of the really good plans we've had, like the Malden River Works Plan, the Climate Action Plan, I hope we'll get to talk about today, to really go where people are, speak literally in the languages that make sense to them, and then really receive and honor that feedback when we get it.
Thank you for that. Question 3. In today's day and age, there's a lot of disagreement about what is best for the city. How do you, or will you, tackle voting for what you want versus what your constituents want? Starting with Karen McDonald.
This is a great question, and I think it actually gets to what does democracy mean? Because we have a representative government. You elect us, and we make 100 decisions, little decisions in a week. And so what guides us? For me, and what I hope for all of us guides us, is our values. Yep. And we have to be transparent about that. We'd be clear with the voters, this is what I'm about. This is what I stand for. So for me, those values are transparency and inclusivity and safety and accessibility and honoring diversity. And there's a quote that I love from, I think it's a Maya Angelou quote, that is, courage is the most important of all your values, because without it you cannot practice your other values consistently. So the real questions are often when there are tough votes. Can you take a vote that aligns with your values even when you have political pressure? I don't believe I know all the answers coming in the door. I actually think it's important to be able to learn to change your mind. It's also important to be outvoted sometimes. Democracy means, in general, the will of the people should govern, and there are maybe things that, a majority of Maldens disagree with me about, and that is okay. We're a diverse community. We're going to disagree sometimes. We can disagree in a way that also learns from one another and that honors one another's humanity without tearing each other down. My kids watch the city council meetings, and I want them to be proud of their leaders wrestling with it and working it out. So I really want to be transparent with voters about my values, what I'm willing to stand up for. You have to look yourself in the mirror every day and make sure that you honored what the values that brought you there. And then learn from your colleagues and be willing to try a new way and be flexible about how we actually get things done. And I think that's shown to be really effective for getting actual change to happen that impacts the lives of our residents.
Ready? I know she's gonna reset the clock. This is a question that I think we have to look at every time we take a vote, right? Is the decisions being made with inside the council and also a reflection? I will tell you, Council McDonald knows this well, is we want to have people in the audience, just like we do now. We have a public meeting for the finance, which is about a $300 million vote. At the end of the year, we have a requirement that the public comes in and they have the option to have discussion, talk about, and literally the joke is, and it's not a joke, nobody shows up. So I think that is engaging the community to be part of it. And there's a lot of challenge that we've heard that, right? Is information, vocabulary, terminology. And there's gonna be times where Councilman McDonald's right, we're gonna make a mistake, we're gonna vote the wrong way, but I think it's how you react to that. Laws are fungible, right? If we make a mistake, we can go back and do that. Now there's gonna be some changes or some votes we make. Not all the community's gonna understand that, right? And I think there's gonna be votes probably in the next 6 to 12 months that I think everybody in this room will understand what I mean, is we're gonna have to take some hard votes. We're not gonna agree with those votes, probably personally and from our own value system, but from a community and our sustainability and growing and balancing that budget, we're probably gonna have to take those votes that way. So those are the things where I think you take a step back, we're gonna try everything we can do, but at the end of the day, we have to make decisions for the greater good. And some residents are gonna like those and some are not. But I think the important thing too is, as a council, it's important you have to work together and understand that even if I don't agree with Councilor McDonald, he doesn't agree with me, it's you go out after and you laugh and you talk about it and you move on. And I think that's just as important as the vote, but the outcome of the vote and what happens when you disagree, you walk out and you're still friends and you're still residents in this community, and that's how you make this place better. And that's how, honestly, the rules get better, right? Because you take input.
Thank you. So I'm a very much a mission-driven person. I'm driven by my ethics and my mission, and I'm very vocal about them. So to me, what I do is I put it out there. Anybody who knows me, I every week I put the agendas out there. I put what my thoughts are out there on the agendas so that you can all read them. I ask for your feedback, and that is how I base all of my decisions. I like to take everybody's, as many as I can, considerations and feedback from everyone, youth included. People can't attend meetings. There are so many reasons why people can't show up. I know my parents couldn't. They were both working parents. They couldn't show up to a meeting at 6 o'clock at night. Wasn't gonna happen. So I try to reach out and go to where the people are and bring their voices back with me. And I want to be able to put my head down at night and know that I did what I thought was right. I stuck by my values. And I ask for feedback, but in the end, if I do have to change my mind, and I have done that, and I've done that this year on a big one, something that I didn't think I'd find myself in, but when I listen to people, my mind was changed, and it really is all about making things easier for hardworking folks that don't have time to be connected. So I make it a point to go out in the community. I am everywhere I can be. I ask people all the time, what do you think, how we're doing? I did a survey, I put out surveys, I do newsletters. I really try hard to get feedback before I make any decision on the city council. But also knowing I am mission driven and I'm pretty clear about where I am and my decisions where they'll be made. There's 11 of us up there. I always say we should have different opinions, but you'll always know where I stand. I'll always be honest and clear and upfront.
I learned early that the old standard that a committee shouldn't be over 3 people. Because once you get up to about 5 people, you can't decide on dinner, let alone get anything done.
It's true.
we have a rather large city council for a reason, because of how many people we represent. But that's where compromise comes in. That's how you get things done. Are you going to please everyone all the time? No, it is impossible. It really is. But if you can do the greatest good for the greatest number, that's a starting point. What I would like to bring to council is an effort toward communication. And I think that's something that has been somewhat lacking. Obviously not at all, or nothing would get done at all. But I've noticed, watching city council meetings, talking with people who have been on council, people who have paid attention to it, you see people on council arguing their point of view with passion, with caring. But I think sometimes people tend not to listen as much to everyone else. I think it can happen. You get so focused on your message that you forget to pay attention to the other messages in the room. I would like to serve as a bridge in that respect. That's what I've been able to do in other organizations I've been in. Also, along the idea, I'm an educator. Office hours are a part of my life. I've already pledged that I will be holding regular meetings with constituents, by preference spread out throughout the year. By great preference, at least one in each ward with the ward counselor who's there. And by greatest preference with the other at-large counselors, so we can give another opportunity. Because some people are just more comfortable speaking on a one-on-one basis. Some people are more comfortable speaking in a small group.
My campaign, as long as it has been, has always been about community. And what I found surprising was that at my kickoff, I had people that would normally never be in the room together, never mind speak to each other. And what was really humbling for me was that they were there to help me to kick off my campaign. My campaign is based on, I grew up in Malden, I've lived here my entire life. I live in the most racially, economically, and religiously diverse section of Malden, where everything was just based on community and working together. And it's that community and that type of environment that I want for Malden to continue to be and to work towards being. And on the council, I feel like we have had, you can see there's passionate people and passionate opinions, and I feel that it's time for everybody to come to the table, and that's what I'm best at. It's about bringing people together. It's about listening first. It's about teaching our young people coming up that there's not one way to look at it, to look at a problem. To make an actual decision, you need to look at both sides. You need to look at this side, you need to look at this side, and decide in your heart where you stand on that issue. And for me, it will be the greater good. It will be what is best for the city, to move it forward and to build and to make sure we can all work together. And I promise that I will work with people. I will see the other side. I'm not always going to agree with everybody, but I promise to be the person that's going to say, okay, I'll hear your side. Let's talk about this. Because somewhere in the middle is the solution that's going to be best for everyone. But my campaign, my nonprofit work, how I work my own small business that I've owned for over 25 years, has always been collaboration, working together, and that's what I bring. That's what I bring to the City Council.
Thank you. I try, when I see some things that are coming in, to do my homework first. And then you do have to listen to everybody, because as many people we have in the city or in each ward, we have as many different opinions about any subject, mostly. And I've tried to listen and talk to people, especially the ones that might not agree. We might see it differently, because I do think there's been lots of times, and I think you said that I never thought about it like that, or I could convince them I never thought about it like that. And so it's kind of, looking at it, sort of holistically, because within any decision, there is so much that goes on into it. So I try to, I stick with my values. I try to, again, listen and communicate. My mother used to say you have two ears and only one mouth, so you do a lot more listening than you do talking, which is what I try to do, because I really want to hear and feel and have those conversations. And they are a lot of times one-on-one. You know, when you're out walking, when you're doing some of the things, you shopping is a little longer. Usually it's at Stop and Shop because you find somebody that has an opinion about things, and I love those things. It's meeting people where they are. Instead of them coming to me, I try to go to them and be out there, and I want to continue to kind of be there for the people, and my ears are always open.
Ready? All right. For me, there are several things that are not a compromise. They don't have two sides. There is, for me, the right way. Protecting our most vulnerable, people with disabilities, the LGBTQ community, trans rights, immigrants' rights, and safety. I think that everyone, no matter who they are, what their age is, their abilities, whether they are highly educated or they never got an education and they are on disability because they were never able to do more than that, they should be able to live with safety and dignity and comfort in Malden. That is not something I can compromise on, ever. So aside from that, I do believe as a representative of Ward 1, and by extension the city, but mostly Ward 1, I need to come to the table knowing what my constituents want, and as long as it doesn't violate human rights, I need to fight for that, regardless of what my opinion might be. That's the bottom line. And for our young people here who are coming of voting age, if your elected officials are not doing what you want and they're not listening to you, use your voice, vote them out.
Even better, run for office.
Yep.
Run for office. That is what I did. I got sick and tired of complaining, and I decided I'm going to do something and not rest on my laurels and let things happen around me. It's time to step up and be involved. Sorry, that got really passionate.
Nice.
All right. So, one of the great challenges of democracy, but also its greatness, is that we working to take individual ideas and opinions and work together to take collective action. So that is really what we try to do. And for me, I just actually got this question from someone the other night about dropping someone off at the airport with my granddaughter, and her friend asked, why did you run for city council? And some of it I said, I was frustrated that I went to our traffic commission, whose responsibility is safety. I showed them a plan for a road that was going to make it 75% safer, and they did not step up and do their work. They kind of pushed that off. And then also I worked with a group, Preserve Malden, to get the Community Preservation Act. And then I was very frustrated, particularly with one counselor who was trying to basically take over the community involvement part of that and not have the community involved in making the decisions about what to do with the money we just voted collectively to tax ourselves on. So those were things that motivated me individually to get out there and run for office. But then it was, I know that getting out there and running, by getting elected is a demonstration that there is support for what you're trying to do. So that is one of the things, but it is, I do always know that having worked in Malden, Somerville, other communities, that working to make sure you have input in community decisions, taking the best ideas is what we need to strive for, and that makes a better community, and that's what gives me confidence about what we try to do, is really making sure we have good input from the community, listening to that, and makes our community better. So that's really what I strive for. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. And for question 4, what inspired you to run for council?
Great. You need to think of something new.
All right. Well, I answered that a little bit on that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you want a car with
So-
us when you're dropping somebody off.
Okay. Well, I think it is. Partly I've always liked serving. So my career, coming out of both undergraduate and law school, I made the decision to get involved in public service. Particularly at my background is in engineering and environmental law, and I just thought it was very important to have people with high qualifications working for the public good. I think one of my first bosses out in California, Harmon Wangui, we were working to make some decisions about how to clean up the lead in the air in Los Angeles. And he said, we have Chevron on one side and the Lung Association on the other side, and neither one's quite satisfied. I think we're doing the right thing. So that's a little bit of what I want to bring, is that to serve the public, listen, and work collectively to do good. And I trust that anybody who elected, you have to really respect that they put the time in to listen. I mean, I do in somewhat wish more people would make that decision. You look decades ago, there might be 6 or 7 people running for each one of these offices, and now it's I have a kind of an opponent out there. I don't know. I guess his mom finally put up a sign, so I guess there's some work there that he's doing. But but more people can make that choice to run, and we should. That's something we should encourage and welcome. And I never discourage anyone from stepping up to run. I really respect that. It's not an easy decision where people are both, many people in the family are working, jobs are demanding, jobs are 24/7. It's not an easy decision to make. So it is a big personal decision. But for me, I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot about my community, and it's something that's been rewarding for myself, as well as it's so happy to see when someone says you did a good job, you got the light on my street fixed or something like that. That's both the small things and the big things that makes it rewarding. So
My career, watch that. You are an inch from the edge.
Okay.
You made me nervous too. Don't move your seats.
No, I'm well set over here.
So my career background is in mechanical engineering. I work in commercial property insurance. I've been doing it for 11 years. I like it. It's a great paycheck. But a couple years ago, I was having a conversation with my very supportive husband about how I was jealous that he was so electrified and so passionate about his job, and I was not the same. And something had to change. I started coaching rowing. I started expanding more into that part of my life. I've been rowing for 20 years. I'm a damn good coach, and I really like working with people, and I really like working with kids. I coach high school boys, which is very entertaining. Yeah. And as I started delving into my passions, I realized at my core, I am a problem solver, a doer, and I like working with people. And so I was in this concoction of life events this summer that opened up the opportunity to run and to actually participate in a campaign around the coaching and back surgery and trying to rehab for head of the Charles and all the other things that I juggle. But I had this opening, and I thought, I've been complaining for years. Just do something about it. You can do it better. Maybe. And if not, see you in 2 years. But something has to change. Nothing will change if nothing changes. And you either have to decide to be the change or sit back and let change happen around you. And I decided to be the change.
Thank you. Well, I actually kind of came into it a little organically. I am I work in a nonprofit at the YWCA in Malden, and I was on the school committee first. And the reason I started that is we were overseeing out-of-school time programs, and one of them was Ferryway. We still do. But I'd have people sort of coming and having concerns about the schools and what's going on, and have questions and so I started reaching out and doing a lot more of that work and working with the school committee member at the time. And when the seat opened up, I felt like I'd been trying to do this work already without sort of being the school committee member. So so that's how I started getting into it. And then I started getting even more involved because of a school committee member in my ward, in all the things that were going on, and being really a part of that. So again, took that next step. And it really was because I was doing a lot of work anyway, well, not anyway, but and I really felt like I was making a difference. I feel like I'm still making a difference. And and so it was really something that kind of came organically, wasn't something that I really aspired to or thought about. And then I was encouraged to say, why don't you do it? The words were, now it's time to put your money where your mouth is. So when I asked, a lot of questions and getting those things answered. So I take it very seriously. I am open to anybody that wants to talk and make some changes. I'm happy to work with anybody to improve our ward, and our community.
Thank you. When I decided to run for school committee, it was an open seat. And I had already spent a lot of time advocating for my own daughter's special education services. And I was slowly helping other families. And what I was teaching them to do is to have a voice. I wasn't doing the work for them. I was showing them how to do it and how to be successful and how to properly advocate for what you need with passion, with clarity, and being professional. Because you have to work as a team with the teachers, with the administration, and that was my passion to come onto the school committee. It was also, I'm a bully child. I was a bully child, so that was really significant for me. I take those things that happened in my past with me as an adult, so that was one of the other things that was very important to me in our school, to make sure bully prevention and that young voices were heard and that we had a clear path for every child to feel safe. Bringing on and working on, to end child marriage brought me more to working with the state contingency. And then I ran for office and I lost. But then that didn't stop me, because I supported my ward counselor and I worked hand in hand with him on some good projects. And 4 years later, I decided, I was watching council meetings and I was there in the audience, and I saw a clear division, and I saw our city divided with them versus us, and decided as a collaborator and how I grew up and the passion that, everybody that did grow up in, knowing that we all work together for common goals. That's why I'm running. I'm running to bring people together. I'm running to show people and to show our students and give good examples that this is how it can all be. As a counselor at large, I do not plan on jumping into somebody's ward and telling them what to do. I plan on calling and saying, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? Do you need a grant I can help you with? What can I do to support you? What can I do to support Malden to be successful? That's why I'm running. I'm passionate, I'm experienced, I have leadership skills, I own my own business, budgets and money are important to me, and I know I can make a change for Malden.
Running for office was not something I planned for. I was once asked, though, by a student what I considered a truly filthy joke. And my response was...
Where are we going with this?
My response was one I heard where somebody said, oh, I never vote, because they say people who don't vote have voted for the winner. And I always like a winner, so I don't vote. To my mind, that was a filthy joke. It was a ridiculous concept. You need to be involved. I've seen a number of the city council meetings online, and as Michelle just said, there have been some divisive ones, and I've been very honest in saying I felt city council should be working on the issues that relate to the city. City council is the best example of the city working for the need and the good of the city as a whole. We need to unite and improve our lives. As city councilors, the job is representing those 65,000 residents of Malden, the over 70 languages spoken, the countless cultures. So what made me decide to run was a feeling that I could do something, that I could hopefully help to bring everyone together.
Okay. So, I never thought I'd be a city councilor. I'm a social worker, I'm a collaborator, I'm a community builder. I was raised by my father, who's Puerto Rican, in the Bronx. And my mother was a first-generation immigrant in the projects in the Bronx. We were fighters. They raised us to fight for our rights, for equity, for inclusion. That's how I was raised. Going to rallies, I don't kid myself that we aren't always going to agree. And sometimes there isn't a middle ground. Something to what Bryn was saying. There isn't. There are sometimes things that you have to boldly go forward to fight for the underdog, for the marginalized people, for the people whose voices aren't heard. And so when I was the Human Services Director here in Malden, I started to do that. And I was working on things that I saw and heard from Malden that were doing a great service here. It might ruffle feathers, but it's making good trouble. And it's naive to think that you're going to make everyone sing like Kumbaya together. There's 11 of us up here, and that's why we should be working together, but we're not always going to agree. I ran for office after I was not appointed to my position, and I thought, I'm still going to fight for this city because I am resilient, and I bring your voices, all of you, with me to the city council. That's all I ever think about. It's not, I can get along with anybody. I sit on the side, with anyone. I always said I would sit aside from the devil himself if it was going to help this city, right? But you are my priority. The youth, the people out here, those are the voices that are in my head, and that is why I continue to fight, and I always will, no matter what, win or lose. Thank you.
Why I ran for city council? I mean, I think if I look back and, I was never interested in politics, but I say when I look back, my grandfather was a state rep, my uncle was a ward councilor, so I think it was naturally in your blood. I was finishing up grad school, and there was going to be a race, and I think if you say enough things and say I can do that, somebody says do it, you try it, and that's what happened. It was a long race, and Councilwoman will mention there was 7 or 8 people running in that race at one point. It was a long race, and I can tell you the reason why I ran for office then and the reason why I'm still here now was completely different things. I think as you get older, you mature, you see the world from a different light. The world has certainly changed, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. When I first ran, I ran for myself, to be quite honest. You try to represent the people, and you think you know everything, and you don't, as a first-year counselor and a younger adult. But then as you have children, you start to see the world from their perspective and making sure that parks that I kind of outgrew and now have to be important, and the streets are safe, and it's crime, and the schools are good. And then I reflect on my parents as they get older, right? Can they stay here? Can they make sure the same thing? Can they afford to live here? Can they still, get around the city with their mobility issues and getting older? And they're not public. Let me just say that before they kill me, I get home. But you start looking at from that perspective. I would just echo everybody up here. We all have day jobs. Steve's retired, but we all have day jobs. This is not a full-time job, but everybody up here has the passion to do something. And I would, reach out and tell you, the youth, you are very young, and get active and be involved. But we all may not agree on the issue, but I think we're doing it for the right reason. We want to bring change and stability to the city of Malden in our own little way, right? And I think that's very important. But I also think it's important that when you look at representation, it's just not 1 or 4 or the 11, but how those 11 work together. Just like your family, just like your local churches and your house of worship and your school, you have to work together for that. And so I'm just as passionate now as I was when I first got elected. And while things have changed, and some things I completely see the different, the problems unfortunately are still there, and unfortunately getting a little bit bigger. But the values, I think, have changed from my perspective, and I really believe Malden's a great place for all that live here, from the youth to the elderly.
So my standard answer to the question of why did you run for office is that, well, it was the pandemic, and we were all asking, what do we do with our lives? So I decided to run for office, and it was something I knew I could do. I'd worked in and out of politics and campaigns. My day job, I'm a nonprofit executive. I knew I had skills that I could bring to the city. So that's my standard answer. But I will tell you all the deeper truth underneath that answer, which is that during the pandemic, in the summer of 2020, I lost my father to COVID, very tragically. And I watched my kids, who were very young. My eldest was in kindergarten, and virtual kindergarten is not a thing I would ever recommend. And I watched how hard it was for them, and I said, we have to do more. I have to do more in this city to invest in and make it the community that I want to raise my kids in. I'm sorry, I'm just a little emotional. And then someone asked me, because I was involved in volunteering, and someone said, have you thought about running for office? Your voice could really matter. And I had not intended to. I hadn't thought about it. I didn't grow up in Malden. I didn't know that many people in the city. My parents didn't know anybody. I didn't have a lot of money, but I said, yeah, I think that's something I can do. And my first campaign was one of the greatest gifts was how many people showed their faith in me by donating to my campaign and volunteering, and every day that I won, which is rare to win on your first time out, and I worked really hard for that. And so every day that I serve, I try to honor both my dad as well as all the people who have donated and volunteered and helped out and shared their hopes and their dreams with me when I knocked on their door or I ran to them at the grocery store. And it's a great honor to do that. The reason I keep running is because I think I can make an impact. And if I ever can't make an impact on behalf of the city, I won't run. But that's my hope, is to continue to honor the folks who've invested in me and continue to make an impact for my kids.
Thank you all. Question 5. What makes Malden home to you? Starting with Councilor McDonald.
After all that emotional, you gotta put right this wrong. Jeez.
Malden is a really special place. And I tell people about Malden, and I say, we're only 5 square miles, but it's such a mix of people here. The Malden mix is just unparalleled, I tell you. And that's really beautiful for us. So I'm a multiracial person, and I know many folks who are in mixed religion, mixed race families, and it means a lot to raise my kids in a place where that is valued and they have peers who can relate to and talk to about that. I am also an out transgender person and elected official, and there are not that many of us in Massachusetts or in the country, and it means a lot to be able to be in a place where I feel like I can be safe walking down the street, where I feel like I have supporters and allies, and I can help hold space for people to be themselves in their own context, young, old, any age. I think that we have incredible assets in Malden, and not just the parks or the T access, but the fact that people really care and volunteer here at a rate I just haven't seen other places. They give so much. I volunteer at the Warming Center. I donate I deliver some meals on Thanksgiving. But Malden shows up for one another, including and explicitly across that difference. Yep. I do think we have something special here that models what diverse community and multiracial democracy can look like. We see it in the schools, which are some of the most diverse in the entire Commonwealth. But we also see it in the way that we try to work things out. There's more we can do. We got challenges. We got places we can grow. But there's something magical about the mix of people that are here and the way folks invest in this community that I'm really proud to be a part of.
You got to repeat the question because I wasn't listening. I was talking with Councilman McDonald when you said it.
Question 5. What makes Malden home to you?
Well, I mean, I think from a standpoint, my perspective, I was born here, and that's not always, they got to be the standard answer. But I've known no other home, right? Even college, I went locally into Boston with some of the best universities, and sometimes I regret that. But the same token is, I think Massachusetts is a great state. I think Boston is one of the greatest cities in the world. But I think Malden, it's my home. But the ethnicity here is important too. I have 3 kids, and I would not want to have my kids grow up anywhere else. I believe it's good to be in a diverse crowd. They learn that it's not aseptic, and everybody looks the same. That's not the way the world's going to be, especially when they go into the real world and they have to work and they have to understand that. I think we have all education types. We have private, we have vocational, we have charter, we have public. I think it's a great opportunity from there. We're a working class community. We have trains that get us into one of the greatest cities in the world, like I mentioned. We have great parks. We have great resources. There's a ton of history, right? Converse, Rebel was started here. That history is still here. That's right. I mean, it's where America was started, and there's all that history there. And I think that's the balance, right? Is keeping some of that history and those traditions and growing in a way that makes it livable and certainly affordable for all. And that's a challenge in these days. But I think it's a community where we fight, with passion, not physically, and everybody has that voice and that talent, and that's important, right? You see it with the diversity of the group. You even see it in the areas, right? You have Linden and you have Edgeworth, and you have these are little towns within themselves, and you carry that pride. And that's what excites me here. And the other thing that really excites me is we have the river. We're talking about the river project, right? To me, that's the jewel. That is the next step for this city in terms of making recreation. When they were doing that study, I wanted to do, still time, but you know, it's money is like Providence. You go down to Rhode Island, they have the arts in the water, right? I envision a time where we put sculptures in the middle of that river or on the side there to have those communities. Everett's done a great job. There's a lot of great things we have. I think by being a sister city to a great city like Boston, we should be able to work together, universities and arts and sports. It's all about where we are location. So for me, it's about just growing up here, seeing that mix of diversity and having, I think, that passion that's the old Yankee or the New Englander in you.
Okay, thank you. So I already told you I'm from New York, from the Bronx, and I came here for school. I did not land right in Malden right away. My husband was going to the Boston Architectural Center. We landed somehow, I don't know, in Newton, and I knew right out of the gate, this is, no offense to Newton, I have good friends there, but it's not what I was used to. I grew up in a very diverse community, and so we started looking, and we chose Malden after a lot of places that we look, and we chose it for a lot of reasons. We're very careful. We chose it because of the train. We didn't have cars, we only took trains, and we rode our bikes, so we needed somewhere with good public transportation, so we looked at that. We're avid hikers. We go hiking all the time. We picked a house that was right near the Middlesex Fells. We go in hiking every weekend to try and pretend like we're not in the city. It's very healthy. And then also the Malden River. We canoe, we kayak. I'm also on the Malden River all the time. And these were things that when we moved here, the people living here didn't even know existed. Like, I have some friends that we took into the fells, like, how could you not have hiked in here? So we chose Malden because it was something, it felt home immediately to me. When I pulled in here, I'm like, this is it. We've looked around enough. This is where we're gonna raise our kids. Although I did kind of think we might go back to New York, but it's a little too big of a city. So we've landed here. All three of our kids have gone to the public schools here, and it's just felt like home from the second I got off that train. And we started looking around. I'm like, yeah, we got it. We chose Malden, and we love it.
My family jokes that my wife imported. I grew up in Ohio, in Cincinnati. And she grew up locally in the Boston area. When we got married, we first got a condo in the Brighton area. Because looking at it from my perspective, religious point of view, within Orthodox Judaism, on the Sabbath, on holidays, you have to walk. You cannot drive, you cannot ride. So you need to be within walking distance of your congregation. So we looked at the communities that had Orthodox congregations. And we visited them. We looked at them. And Malden was the jewel. It was the friendliest, the most diverse, the most admittedly convenient. And we just felt at home here. So much so that friends of mine laughed. We had a small storage cube because a relative of my wife's was putting stuff in, didn't have anyone who needed some furniture we were allowed to have. So we had a storage cube. We moved that from Brighton to Malden 1.5 years before we found our house, because we knew we wanted to be here. And then we found our house, and we moved here. I will admit the housing costs were also an issue. We sold a condo, we bought a house. We're still paying on both, it seems. But we found a community that had everything and has everything. Anywhere I need to get, I can get by the T. Where we were in Brighton, the commute I had to the Longwood area, to the various colleges there, was decreased when I moved to Malden, taking the Orange Line. Distance was quadrupled, but got there much faster. We love the friendliness, the openness, and the difference. It's what attracted us most.
Thank you. So it's funny because people really don't believe me or my children when we say, I still live on the street I grew up in and that I was born from. And I promised my husband it was a 5-year plan. Yeah, it really isn't. It's more like 25 years later and we're still here. And it was really where we chose. I could not imagine living anyplace else but where I live. And it's funny because my husband's from Vietnam originally, so diversity was always key on how I grew up, and it was really important for my children to have both of that, because he's also Vietnamese, but he's also Buddhist, so we needed religious diversity as well. So that was really important. And it was also, it's my whole family, my parents here, my sister still lives here, my brother's up here, my aunt's across the street. You know, and I wanted my children to grow up in that type of community, where your parents and your grandparents and cousins are like within steps of each other. And we continue on that, and it's just, Malden has everything I've ever needed. My children, my oldest is severely dyslexic and severely ADHD, and she couldn't have had a more successful experience that we had, you know, going through Malden Public Schools, and we didn't have some of the horror stories that other people had because of how Malden just treated its residents and the youngest of people. So it's really, you know, it's funny when with Councilor Simonelli and I ran against each other, we went to kindergarten together. So it was, it was really difficult for people in our area to be like, who do we choose? So, and we're still great friends, and you know, it's that type of community, and it's that type of feel that makes Malden home for me. It really is. So I wouldn't change it for the world.
Hi. Well, I too grew up in Malden, and I did move out, and then you know, made the conscious decision to move back. It's just no other place like it. And really commit to my community as I lived in California, I lived in Woburn, I forget where else now, but one other place. And again, I really wanted to be here in Malden and commit to it. Working at a nonprofit that really works with the neighbors, the friends, the everybody in Malden, that really, as you talk about the vulnerable populations, that's who I serve, with youth, their families, teens, residents, you know, everybody. The Malden, I think we've talked about it, like the diversity, and we have not only diversity in culture and race, but economically, ideologically, we just have everything, and that's the tapestry of what makes us so important and what makes us so special. I do think Council McDonald was right when he said we do show up for each other. We have almost that small town feel sometimes because people are here, and when someone makes the call, people show up. I want to be a part of that. I like to bring people together to continue to do that, and I like to make sure I make a difference in the community that I love and I call home.
So, I'm 33, and for my age group, it's actually really hard to stay where you grew up. Life is so expensive. If I wanted to live across the street from my parents, I would need to buy a very expensive home, and I would need to drive everywhere. I'm a city person. I don't like the suburbs. I don't want to have to drive everywhere. Malden, for the last 5 years, has been sort of the last stronghold of sort of kind of affordable housing for people my age. We have a couple friends who got in the last 5 to 10 years, but we just had friends who moved from Maplewood to Leominster because they cannot afford to buy here. We have a group chat called Malden and Surrounding Areas the Second, because we have added friends that we've met along the way. There's so much that Malden has to offer, so much so last year, 2 years ago? When did we get married? 2024. Yeah, last year. Last year.
You knew, that was good.
Yes. Last year, we actually did a Jack and Jill bachelorette party completely in Malden. I started with brunch karaoke at Franny's and Patrick's. We did Bodeborg. We had a big group dinner with like 35 people at All Seasons. We went to Faces and Hugh O'Neill's afterwards, back to Patrick's for karaoke. It was a Saturday night.
It's a pub crawl. It's a pub crawl.
Yeah.
It's good.
And you know what? Everyone was like, you don't want to go anywhere? And it was so much fun to be in our town, at the local businesses,
at any given moment, even after this, I'm meeting up with friends after this. I'm gonna have a cold one somewhere. Probably Mystic. I'm of legal drinking age. But one of the fun things about Malden is, you know, it's such a small place, but it has so much to offer. You can text your friends, what do we want to do? Hiking, skiing, going to the beach. I'm 8 minutes from my boathouse. It's great. I love living here. It is so awesome, and I'll be here for a while.
Thanks. I guess I get the last word on this. So, well, one of the things, you know, my wife and I happened to get a job taking me from Sacramento, California out here, and we initially lived in Reading. Malden was very convenient because we were both working in town, and so we rented actually next to where Karen lives. So, so we landed here for the convenience initially because the transit was great and it was working for us. But immediately we found very welcome. I don't know, maybe Councilor Spatafor, maybe Peg and Michelle remember Arthur Boyle Jr. Was a counselor.
Yep.
And
So was his mother.
And yeah, that's right. Peg, was it Peg?
Yeah, Peg Boyle.
Was Grand Marshal right at our 350th. So we felt very welcomed right away, which was nice. So that was an initial thing. And then, so we rented, you know, we looked around the area. We did want to sort of stay a little bit north of Boston. And Malden ended up being affordable. I mean, that was the type of thing. It was the type of thing. We found a great home. The Mulaney McCusker family had the house we have in for 100 years. So it just shows you that, you know, the places in Malden are very desirable, and this house that we live in was created in a great way, very comfortable. I think the other thing is, like, you know, I grew up, you know, sort of probably in a community like you, a wealthy suburb now out in California, part of Silicon Valley. And it was sort of, you know, all these folks that moved west to take advantage of the great opportunities in California in the 50s and 60s. But it's all the same, and you had to drive everywhere. And, you know, one of the things I like particularly about Malden is the grit. It is the type of place where a lot of immigrants come, and they can take that step up the ladder. And it's actually, I think there's actually been studies like Malden is one of those step up, you call it gateway communities, but it's a place where people can come and step up the ladder of the American dream. So that's the type of thing I like. And then, you know, just living here over the course of time of really getting to know more the diversity. And I know, like, the core program you ran, Karen, and just, you know, there's so our granddaughter getting involved in Walam Kung Fu, and it's just an enriching community, and it really does ultimately, I just say often, we are a model of what America needs to become. America is becoming more diverse, and it's a struggle. I mean, this is the thing you'll see on our council. We as a city struggle with language access and integrating the diverse cultural and you know, and economic things, but we are all committed, and we're up here running because we want to make that happen. And that's, you know, what I see, and that's you know, really what keeps me here to really be a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you all for your responses. We have one final question from the audience. So, what's one mistake you've learned from that you will make that will make you a better counselor?
You know, one of the things I'm closely associated with is the Roosevelt Project, where we were working to improve Roosevelt Field for the students and community. And I mean, I think one of the things, I think people would say it's kind of a failure, so it is one of those things, how do you make that happen? But I think that the thing I learned is that even in struggling to try to do something like that, we got a lot of community input, and I think there are some, you know, we still need to clean up the lead there, but there's some other good that's going to spin out of that in terms of some improvements down at Maplewood Park. Kerstead Park would not have happened the way it did unless I really saw the opportunity to have a string of parks from Roosevelt to Lincoln Common. And so there's these type of things. Sometimes the struggle, you may not always be successful, but there's side things that come out of that. So that's a little bit what I learned. So we struggle as a community, we get that input, and you know, that I learned that's, you know, you got to try sometimes, and that it's failure can happen, but there are good things that come out of that. So that's it.
This is a really interesting question to answer as someone with not a lick of political experience whatsoever. I think there's going to be a point to this ramble. Something that I advise younger people, even when I was first, a couple years into my career, and especially now that I am talking to high schoolers all the time, something that my parents taught me was finding out what you are not interested in and what you don't want to do can be just as valuable as figuring out what you do want to do. So if you are unsure, you should try everything. And maybe you'll make some mistakes, maybe you won't like it, and you can pivot. So as someone who doesn't have a political career at all, what I will say is I look forward to making those mistakes and making those decisions that maybe aren't the right ones for me, and pivoting and learning from those. That's going to be my future.
So I think, early on, you do kind of think you know everything and you're going to make the decisions. And so sometimes the mistakes are really not, and we've talked about this a lot, really getting everyone's perspectives and listening to, what is going on before you make that decision, to make sure that you are representing your community. You do it with heart, you do it with compassion, that you do it morally and ethically. And so it's, sometimes that's usually the beginning of, you make those decisions. So now it's really about making sure that I do my homework, that I know I always say the devil's in the details. And if you don't have everyone's perspectives at that, you easily can make some mistakes along the way. So I think, learning from that and making sure that I do have all the information that I need to make an informed decision for the best of my community and my ward.
One of the mistakes, as you call it, as we could say, was really when I was representing Zonta for the child marriage ban. And one of the mistakes I made was that not kind of thinking out of the box enough, because there's not just one. Zonta is just not in Malden, it's actually global. But in Massachusetts, there's actually 7 Zonta clubs. So, and what I should have realized was that we were better together. So one of the things that I quickly realized in my era was that had I, from the beginning, because it took us 5 years to get this passed, 7 years in total, but the 5 years, for the first 2 years, it was like all these little clubs were working simultaneously. But once we started to work together, in all 7 clubs, 75 Zontian women actually had the Speaker of the House on a Zoom call, and asking the Speaker when they were going to put the vote before the House, and and then I quickly realized collaboration and working and bringing all of the Zonta clubs across the Commonwealth together, we were able to achieve what we wanted to achieve. And the lesson I learned from that was that to take a step back, who else might be working on the same project, who else has similar ideas, and how can we, take one idea and 2 ideas, and maybe it's a bigger success and it's a bigger project. I'm not about me. So if I've said I in the past, I agree. There's no I in team, and I've said that always. So for me, that's really what it was. It was really realizing that collaboration is key, and respecting people's position on where they are in their own projects, and understanding they put in just as much as work as you did. So that's really what it's going to be, and that's how Malden's going to be successful. It's how we're going to come out of this much stronger, better, more enough financial stability, and we're going to be around for a while for you guys, so hopefully we can set that example.
It's an interesting question. For me, I think it comes from expectation. I've had classes I've gone into to teach where I think I know how the students will behave, what expectations they'll have, and I start presenting based on that, and then realize, no, that's not what's going on here. Trust me, as you said, this will veer back and make more sense. I've taught in a number of different areas. I've had students from incredibly diverse backgrounds. But there's an early lesson in this I learned and then forgot and learned again. I may be one of the last generations where people used to still say to kids in high school, "Oh, these are the best years of your life." And it was later I realized what they were going for, what their thought was. And that was, these are the best years of your life because you have no real responsibility. When I started in a public high school, I was 14. 2 seats ahead of me was another new high school freshman who was also at that point about 6 months pregnant. Don't tell me she knew nothing, that these were the carefree years of her life. Drugs were rampant throughout schools. I can't tell you how many friends of mine were helping the family income while working full time while they were freshmen or sophomores. But still, they got that common comment. "Oh, these are the best years of your life." While they're surrounded by teen suicide and other travesties that society left to pass. You have to be careful in what you say and think about people around you and what they're living.
Okay, so, let's see. When I first got on the city council, I was probably, the thing that I probably struggled with and learned a lot, was politics. I know that's gonna sound funny, but I never considered myself a politician. I'm a community builder, a social worker. I'm used to collaborating, having ideas that, it's a great idea. Why wouldn't everybody? Of course, it's a great idea. Why isn't everybody voting for it? But I learned that actually with the youth council. I put up a youth council with a group. We worked really hard with young people from Malden High School. Seriously, I think 4 years we worked on this. And I put it together, obviously, not in the greatest way because it didn't pass. But we worked so hard, and hearing the no's, it was so, I just couldn't understand, how somebody could vote no to that. So I think learning, and I would, even though I did call all the counselors, trying to think, why would someone say no to this, and then coming forward with the answers, you know what I mean? Just to make sure that you explain that better and taking all everybody's viewpoints into consideration, because that was a hard thing. Having that first come out and not pass. And so I learned a lot from that, stuck to it with the other youth and some of my fellow counselors here, and we brought it back up again. It might have failed twice, I don't remember, but ultimately it passed, and we're still working to make it better. It's the first of its kind here in Malden, so we were bound to make mistakes, but that was a tough one right here that got me, because working with youth is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, I appreciate being second to last for this question, to be honest with you. I got time for me to reflect on my votes. I would say there's 2 votes that I say that I wish I could take back. The first one was, early on, was the trash vote. I didn't support the pay as you throw program initially. And it was not because of the actual program and cycling, with the recycling increasing. It was really, the city was in a financial situation not similar to now, because this one's a little bit more serious, but my debate with the mayor was we should be cutting a couple things before we ask the residents to do pay as you throw. And I think when I look back on that vote, I support it ever since, and I know why we did it, and thank God we have it, to be quite honest with you, because we've saved a lot more jobs having it. We certainly saved the environment. So it wasn't against that, but I think that's what you have to say. You got to have the tunnel vision and move on from that decision. So I'd say that's when I kind of always look back on and have supported ever since. The other vote is the Rose Quarry, which is the development of the old Rose Quarry, which is split between Malden and Everett. There was grandiose plans for that. There was a state highway was going to go through. There was going to be a hotel and mixed-use community and condos and apartments. And, the economy always gets in the way and things shift from that perspective. But that project really, it's a great community, but it wasn't what we were sold in terms of tax base and retail and residential. and ownership and hotel, and that changes the money from us, from our perspective. And it certainly creates a city within a city there. I think personally, if I could go back, I wouldn't have allowed them to change that. I would have been very much more persistent. I think you need to have patience, not only as a human being, but also as a council sometimes, because things have been flowing in the economy. Nobody could project, the pandemic. But I think from that perspective, I wish we held them to their role. Now, they've done some stuff with 55 and older community, but I think that's where we have to be strong as a council in a community where if we want to do something, a project or a building or whatever it may be, and we are that passionate about it and we think it's going to happen, then we have to stand up and make sure it happens. It might be, we might want it next year, but it might not come from 5 years. And that's what I think that conviction there and that patience is part of the process.
So I'll tell you about the first time I went before the planning board. And this was for a paper that I was not the sponsor of. I was working with Councilor Linehan, and it was about cannabis dispensaries and making the rules what we thought was more fair for businesses trying to start out. It was about changing kind of what they call the use regulations of where you can cite some of these shops and trying to preference social equity applicants. So I had done my homework. I talked to city staff. I was prepared. And I was the only person there from the council who was speaking on behalf of that paper, or Councilor Linehan was not there as the sponsor. So, I went up and I gave my spiel, and I got my butt handed to me by the planning board. You may remember that.
I do.
They were not generous
Friendly.
or friendly. I knew there was opposition. I knew there were a range of opinions. They just tore me a new one, and I, did my best to respond. You take it in the moment. Ultimately, the council did not pass that paper. The planning board recommended against it. They review all proposed zoning, and it failed at the council. What I learned out of that, first of all, is do your homework, but then do it again, and do more of your homework. And if you want to succeed, you better have done more homework than anyone else at the table. You have to work for that. The second is that you have to pick your battles. I wanted to support what I thought was a good paper. I wanted to support my friend. But I think I underestimated the depth of complexity that preceded me, that I was coming into. And so I've made it a point to try to understand those things before I figure out where I want to weigh in the future. And then the third thing is to just get back up and be resilient. You lose some fights, and you just got to try again. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Thank you. And lastly, if anyone would like to have a closing statement, here's your chance.
Okay, great.
Is it volunteer?
Yes, there's not a lightning round?
No.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for having us here. I said at the first forum, I really enjoyed these, the chance to dig into and have a little bit more extended conversation, some key questions. Voters have the opportunity to get to know us a little bit better. I am a people person. I think that's one of the key things for being involved in your local government, is just trying to understand what the folks need to hear from you and what they want to know about. So this year I am running on 3 campaign priorities: sustainability, affordability, and inclusivity. We didn't talk much about climate action. That's a big thing that I work on. I also care a lot about the cost of housing. Being able to, buy a house in the future seems so far out of reach. I think we can do more, and making sure this is a safe and inclusive community for everyone. But mostly what I want to say is that it's an honor to serve this community. I asked the voters in Malden for a 3rd term as a city councilor at large. I really want to hear how you think we can tackle the problems ahead. I'm really committed to having our voters weigh in from our fiscal problem and our budget crisis, or crunch rather, it's not a crisis yet, to the future we want to see for our city. I think we have incredible history and assets and people here that we can leverage in Malden. I think that the crisis really that's affecting us, the crises that affect us, are national and regional. We get terrible news, it seems like every day, out of DC. And those affect the streets here and the people here who are under threat. And what I've seen, though, in Malden is that when we band together and we support one another publicly and privately and in all the ways we can, that makes a difference. That helps people survive and make it through. Our immigrant neighbors, our other members of the LGBTQ community, to name a few. And that gives me hope. every day, and I'm grateful to be a part of that energy here in this community. Visit mcdonaldformalden.com if you want to learn more about me, and thank you for your support on November 4th.
I want to thank the Malden Access TV, certainly the youths. I'm sure I can't imagine when I was your age spending a Thursday with a city council. So I think it's really hopeful from this perspective of this community that the activity that we see in this room is delightful, to be quite honest with you. I have 3 kids. I have will be 18 this month, and a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I wish they were as enthusiastic and involved as you are. It's something I think they see their dad and they say, we're going to stay out of that. But I've served for a while, and I can tell you, it's sometimes we always look at Malden, we're in a bad, either fiscal place or it's the traffic's works, but I can tell you, I think this community over the last probably 20 years has gotten stronger, both from a people and a resiliently. There's a lot more organizations here that thrive. There's a lot more people helping people. The parks have gotten better. We've talked about the river, right? When I grew up in Malden, you would not go anywhere near that river. There was cars in there and oil, and there's a long way to go. We're not saying that, but there's a lot of progress been made, and there's a lot more we can do. I've been honored to serve in the city council. You have to have the passion to do it. We are going to face some tough times. There's no doubt about it. I want to bring my skill set. That's what I do in my day job to help solve this crisis, and really make it a place where hopefully my kids can stay. At least for a short time. I do want them out of the house at 18. I want my son to hear that on the TV. But I do want them to stay here, and I want my parents to stay here. I have that same type of close-knit community, and I think that's important in that. I just would ask for one of your votes again on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for hosting this. It's a pleasure to be hosted, especially by our young people, and to share our views and our values with you. It's really important. So I'm so glad when I got that email. I was very excited. So Malden is going to be facing some very tough times, and we need leaders who can just jump right in. People who have already been doing it, experienced leaders that can just, jump in, feet first, head first, just get it done. We're really going to face some bad times, but I think that we could, by working together, which is what we all usually do, is make sure that we're involving your voices. That's very important to me. I listen to everyone. I make sure I reach out and hear what your needs are. I see the youth. I have my own kids. I know that you are listening to the national level, the world level. I know that these things are important to you. So we bring it, and it happens right here in our local level, right? We are a very diverse city, and so we come from all over the world. So issues happening anywhere are going to affect us as people here, and we need to be able to listen and do to make you all feel safe. Especially now, like with the immigration and people that are coming into our city, we just have to stick together, lock arms, and make sure that we're stronger together, that we're not divisive, that we're not, and that we work together. So I am here. I am bold leader. I speak truth to power. I am not afraid. I will always vote my mission, my heart, and what I hear back from the people. I work for you, and I will make sure that I bring your voice always to the City Council. And you can find me at KarenCologneHayes.com online. Thank you.
A lot of people ask me, friends, family, are you going to ask your son before you go to this? It's the teen forum. I said, all I expect from it being a teen forum is what we got tonight. Involved, difficult questions. I served on my first campaign when I was 14. Not entirely because this is something I was raring to go and do. It was a school assignment. I'm not going to deny that. But I learned a lot. So much so I stayed out of the seeking a public office until over 40 years later. But as much as I've agreed with everyone, there's one disagreement I'll make, and I'm sorry, it's with you, Karen, on that.
I know.
I think there is a vote, there is an opportunity for those who haven't been on council as well. to help. Because there's a way of bringing in.
I'm not sure I understood that, but okay.
I appreciate the idea of people who are familiar with what's been going on, but I also think taking in from a different point of view can be helpful. And I feel there are difficulties, obviously more difficulties to come, but that's never going to stop. Every generation gets told we might be approaching the end of the world. Every generation hears you've got to now fix what the previous generation did. So let's step up and work on it. And I'm heartened to hear that from everyone here. I believe I can help. I believe I can help to make a difference. And, like everyone else, davidoffrommalden.org, the number 4. And I look forward to earning your vote.
First of all, thank you so much. I participated in my first youth forum in 2021. And I remember talking to Councillor McDonald, and he said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "I'm really nervous for the youth forum." And he was a little surprised. He was like, "Wait," I'm like, "You never know what they're going to come up with." And yes, I was stumped the last time on 1 or 2 questions. Thank you very much back there. And this didn't surprise me, because they were thoughtful questions that you've asked us. And it's really inspiring to see that. So thank you very much. I'm on my soapbox a little bit here. But throughout my life in Malden, as a resident, a mom, a small business owner, and a community advocate my entire life, I've worked hard to listen, to lead with compassion, humanity, to bring people together. And as your counselor at large, I promise to do the same. You know, we have a budget issue. It's going to take all of us to work together. We have to have our budget more in line with our goals, and more in line with making us more fiscally responsible. Now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What's really important is that, you know, on school committee, I was on school committee during the pandemic, which was absolutely horrendous, trying to get a whole school system to then be online. And I still worked with people, and together we still got things done. So I'm not afraid of hard work, I'm not afraid of innovation, and I'm not afraid of being creative. And I'm certainly not afraid to work hard, because I'll do the work. And that's what we need. We need people on here that are not going to be afraid to do the work. They're going to be working together, they're going to listen, they're going to collaborate, and they're going to get things done, because the residents deserve that. Malden deserves that. In closing, you have 3 votes as for council at large. I'm asking for one of those 3 votes. MichelleFromMalden.com, F-O-R, not 4. And I hope to earn your vote on November 4th or earlier if you're, doing early voting. But like I said, I'm experienced, I have leadership skills, I own my own business, I'm passionate, and I have integrity, and I'm ready to serve. Thank you so much.
Thanks. So I got into this actually because of my commitment to the city of Malden. And, I've worked alongside of residents and businesses and organizations and city departments to really get things done for Ward 1. We often tackle these things thinking outside of the box, which I think is always the best way to be. And really to get some consensus, address some concerns, and really pull Malden forward and make Ward wonderful, as I always say. Things don't always come quickly, or they come easy. As we know, everything moves a little slowly, but I do my homework. I never give up, and my passion for making Malden the best place it can be has never wavered. Let's face it, we might not call it a crisis, I call it a tsunami barreling towards us, and the challenges for us are real. But my determination to face any issue that we have together is unwavering as well. So I think I'm the right person to weather the storm for the city of Malden and keep us moving forward. So I ask for your vote for Peg Crow on November 4th, and it's PegCrow4, F-O-R, Ward1.com.
You guys are pretty young, obviously. This is for the youths. But I'm sure everybody has heard the phrase, it takes a village. I think we've gotten so far away from that as a society. And something that I have noticed for my peers, we are all so ready to be the village for each other. I get messages from friends of mine, especially, I just got one 2 days ago from a teammate of mine who sent me a reel about, like, just being in admiration of, my energy and what I bring to the table as a female friend, as a peer, but also as someone who influences her and her decisions. I'm constantly searching for mentors of my own. When you're young, you always have a mentor. And I think we really lose that part of our village as we grow up. Don't lose that. Look out for the mentors, look out for the helpers, look out for the people who have their hands outstretched to you. Look out for the people who are stepping up. I am one of them. I am young. I don't have any political experience. I'm well educated. I'm energetic. I have a lot of good ideas, and I would be fresh eyes on this incoming crisis that's been coming. It's been approaching. We didn't have to be here now. So, yeah, we need fresh eyes. We need experienced people, but we also need fresh ideas, fresh young people, and someone to represent, honestly, the younger generation, the hopeful homeowners, the young families that are coming to Malden and hope to stay here. And if they can't afford it, if you can't afford to stay where you grew up, what kind of city are we?
Thank you. I really want to thank UMA and all the youth here tonight for making this happen. One of the things of working both in Malden and other communities, I've always found youth have a great input into what we're working on. So I really, your commitment, it really can make a difference, and it's important for us to be involved, and that's why I'm here tonight. So, in terms of my work and priorities, showing my commitment to youth and our seniors, and all of Malden's diverse population, as council president, I worked with and supported Councilor Colin Hayes' work to form the Malden Youth Council. Because I thought it was really important, and I saw her commitment to that. I worked with high school kids and other city leaders to improve pedestrian safety around Malden High and our elementary schools. And I have a plan, and I'm working with our elementary schools, and this will impact our high schools on better bus service. So, and that'll help students and seniors. So, one of my themes always is achieving more together. So that's really, youth is part of what we have to work with, and so that's very important. For my constituents in Ward 6, one of the things I worked very hard on this last few years is to develop a vision for Maplewood Square, so that no individual group or organization decides what the future of our neighborhood is going to be. So, we are working to have events, beautification, supporting our businesses, having better transportation. So that is the thing I'm going to continue to be committed to see that we implement that vision in a strong way. So I asked for the people in Ward 6 to vote for Steve Winslow, and you can go to winslowfrommalden.com to look at all the things I've done. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us in our YouthForum for City Council candidates. We hope tonight provided you all with a better understanding of your choices this November, and we hope that you will get out and vote with youth voices in mind.
To our fellow students who are already 18, make sure to register to vote and make our voices heard. It is important now more than ever that we come together to make our city better each day. Remember that early voting opens October 20th, and on November 4th, polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m.
Thank you again for joining us, and have a great night.